Tuesday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Well, every day is special because I get to chat with you and we get to interact together. Number to call, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 if you want to weigh in on any of the material that we have talked about over the course of this hour, God's sovereign control of all history and what that might mean for America today. We've been talking about this union thing, the President of the United States lying, misleading, distorting the truth. I mean, this aggravates me. And the disaster that the public education system in Michigan is for students that are looking to create a future for themselves. I don't know if you get as worked up about that as I do, but I'd love to have you weigh in on that. This right to work business, we're pro-choice when it comes. I'm not anti-union. I am pro-choice when it comes to union. If people want to join a union and pay the dues and have whatever benefits they believe come from collective bargaining, I am all for that. What I am against is this tyranny where as a condition of holding a job, you have to pay union dues. That's what I am opposed to. Maybe you participated in the Gospel for Asia program, or you've got a reaction to my conversation with John Riley about Gospel for Asia. We'd love to hear from you and have you weigh in on that. So we'll talk about any of those topics. I want to finish up on what I had to say about this right to work business before we go to the phones. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 if you want to join the conversation. And again, I was talking about how the union took Hostess down. I mean, Hostess is out of business because of the bakers union. If you bake bread, it's got to be delivered in one kind of truck, or not the different kind of truck, just a different truck. If it's cake, it's got to go in yet a different truck. Two jobs when you only need one. They had all kinds of these Mickey Mouse rules that were simply designed to provide useless, unnecessary jobs for workers that eventually bankrupted Hostess. And now nobody's got a job. 18,500 people are out of work for one reason, the bakers union. Now, unions, I think part of the reason they're flailing around in Michigan is their numbers are dropping. Michigan's probably the most unionized state in the country, but only 17.5% of the workers in Michigan are unionized. Nationwide, it's under 12% and less than 7% in the private economy. The bulk of union workers today are working for the government, where they are bankrupting city governments, municipal governments, county governments, and state governments, and the United States Postal Service. I mean, that's the reason the United States Postal Service is going out of business. They're going bankrupt. They're completely in the tank because of unions, because of the postal workers unions and the commitments they have, unfunded pensions and health care benefits. Now, the union tried in Michigan, they tried in November to get a constitutional amendment that would protect compulsory unionization of workers, and it failed. It only got 42% of the vote. So the people in Michigan, even 40% of union households voted against that thing. Even the people that are in union households know that there is a problem with unions. And you look at Michigan, if unions, I mean, this is the most unionized state in the country. If unions was such a great deal, then they ought to have the best employment rate. Instead, they have the nation's sixth highest jobless rate. Their unemployment rate at 9.1%. Only 5 states in the union are worse than Michigan. It's got one of the lowest rates of personal income growth between 1977 and 2011. That's a long time. What is that? 34 years. They have one of the lowest rates of personal income growth in the country. And right-to-work states historically have done better. According to the West Michigan Policy Forum, of the 10 states with the highest rate of personal income growth, 8 of them, 80% of them, have right-to-work laws. That means right-to-work is good if you're interested in personal income growth. And you also have a net migration from union states, forced union states, compulsory union states to right-to-work states. Between 2000 and 2010, 5 million people moved to right-to-work states from compulsory union states. Why? Because that's where the growth was. That's where businesses want to locate. That's where personal income is growing up. That's where you can even get a job. Economist Richard Vedder in 2010, Cato Institute, said that without exception, he found a statistically significant positive relationship between right to work and net migration. So here's the deal. People out there are going to castigate us for being anti-worker. I am not. I am pro-worker. That's why I am against compulsory union membership, because I am for workers. I want them to have maximum opportunities. I don't want anything getting between them and their ability to negotiate with their employer the best terms of employment they possibly can. Mr. Vetter, this economist, found a 23% higher rate of per capita income in right-to-work states. So per capita income, again, 23% higher in right-to-work states. Michigan is now 35th in the country in overall prosperity, measured by per capita income. And he says that if Michigan had adopted a right-to-work law in 1977, per capita income for a family of four, by their estimates, would have been $13,556 higher in 2008. So people in Michigan, their lifestyle has suffered to the tune of almost 14 grand for one reason, and that reason is unions. Number 888-589-8840. Let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Elizabeth in Rogers, Arkansas. Elizabeth, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
I just, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to point out, and I just thought it was ironic that you could buy pretty much a small business for someone in a third world country or a very poor part of Asia, and it's easier to start a small business in Asia than it is here in the United States. Last year I tried to start a small business, and with all the taxes and the regulations and stuff, it was very hard to thrive. So,
boy, it just kills it, doesn't it, Elizabeth? And I'll tell you, a lot of those regulations and stuff, they're anti-competitive. They're put in place by people who are in a certain industry. They don't want any competition, so they'll require certain forms to have to be filled out, and certain regulations have to be met, and certain fees have to be paid. Why? Because they want to keep you from being able to pursue your dream, because you might represent a competitive threat to them. So, all right, Elizabeth, that's a great observation. You can set somebody up in the agricultural industry for $460, buy them a water buffalo. You can set a guy up in the taxi cab business in Asia for $200 with a rickshaw. You can set a woman up in the seamstress business for $85 with a sewing machine. Try doing that in the United States. Let's go to Glenn, Amory, Mississippi. Glenn, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, enjoy your program, and I want to make a comment about the union, but first I'd like to say that I get just as worked up as you do about the lies that the president continues to tell about everything. I am so disappointed in many ways of how the election turned out, but that's not my comment, so I'm going to move on. But I want you to know how I get worked up also.
Okay.
And I am so thankful, but I got to say this, I'm thankful that I know the Lord now, this day and time, and I know his word. I appreciate the word that you started out with this a while ago, and I'm thankful for that. But I thank God that I know him. So many people are blinded, and they don't know him, and they're going the wrong way. But now my comment about the union, I belonged to the UAW back in the late 70s and early 80s. And when it came in, it was a town not too far from here, moved down from the north, and it was non-union. The union began to organize. They voted on it 3 times and finally got it the third time. The first time, it was voted down. Second time, voted down. Of course, I voted against it every time, and many others did. But they kept on saying that something was wrong with the vote and all this, and finally they got it in. Right after voting the union in, we went on a 6-month strike, walking the picket lines through the wintertime, snow on the ground. We had barrels, but that 6 months that we were on strike, the money that we lost during those 6 months, we could never gain back. And we were treated right by our employer, but the union came down from the north and began to work and finally got it in. But no, I'm not for the union. I belong to one now, which I'm thinking about getting out of myself. But anyway, appreciate your program. That was my experience with the union. The money we lost on that 6-month strike, we'll never gain back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that call, Glenn. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this. Let me grab one more call, and I'll look for it on the break. A call about the The union bosses, the employees, they're not suffering. They're making bank. They're still sitting there collecting their fat $100,000-$200,000 salaries, while the poor schlubs that are part of the union are out walking the picket line in the snow. Let's quickly go to John. John, you're on Focal Point. Got about 30 seconds. What's on your mind?
Hey, John. Just offer some contrast. I'm a union member myself, and point one, different unions run different ways, just like different companies do.
Uh-huh.
So you might have good companies out there to work for. You might have bad companies to work for. It's the same thing with unions.
Mm-hmm.
There's good unions to be a part of, and there's good, unions who don't do things the right way. The right to work stuff, it's kind of like a good analogy, I think, for me. If you got a fitness center, a club where everybody goes and pays dues, use the equipment and use the machinery, and everybody's benefiting from the health equipment in the club, then you have some people come in who don't want to pay the dues, but they want to run on the treadmill. It's not fair to the rest of the group.
All right, John, listen, I appreciate what you're saying. I got to let you go because up against the end of the hour. He's talking about the free rider problem, and that's a myth, John. If you want to stick around, I'll address that coming out of the news, the myth that there's some kind of free rider problem with non-union workers. Focal Point AFR Talk back in 5. Stay with us.
American Family